All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg, and please click like, please click subscribe. I'll start with that. We got to get I keep saying it over and over and over again. I don't know if anyone's listening. I guess the answer is they're not, Arlen, because that's why the subscriptions are low and the likes are low as well. But maybe we live in hope that will change. Last thing before we welcome Arlen, please do call in at any time. Arlen loves the calls. I like them too. 240-242-5646. Arlen, happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you, Hal. How is it over there in Maryland? I know it's beautiful here today. I look outside, the sun is shining, and it looks like a nice day weather-wise, at least.
Yeah, it's really gotten nice here too. We've had some cold weather, but it's really warming up and birds are chirping. I can hear them in my right outside my window. You know, we have like an air conditioning unit. I guess it's a room unit as opposed to a full house unit. Don't worry about you. You're right in the middle, Arlen. Just look at what I'm sending you. So we have birds that are actually nesting. They do this every single year. I saw a sparrow just sitting on top of that flat area where the unit sits. And it's very annoying because their little nestlings are going to start chirping as soon as they hatch. And it's very, very annoying. As soon as the sun starts to shine, the little birdies chirp. And you think it sounds nice to hear the birds chirp, but it doesn't. It's not so nice at 5 a.m.
Well, Hal, if you happen to hear noise of birds here, it's because there is a bird in my house. It's a parakeet, a white albino parakeet. So you might hear her chirp, but she's usually pretty quiet.
So you have a bird as a pet, is that right?
You are correct.
So does the parakeet talk or does it just chirp? Does she just chirp?
At this point, it just chirps. This bird I think has PTSD, very scared bird, very nervous bird. I'm working on it all the time. Every day I work on it to get her to trust me and to be, friendlier. And so I'm hoping for progress as we go on.
How do you know it's a girl bird, a female bird? Do they tell you when you purchased her? I mean, she hasn't laid any eggs, has she?
No, I took her to a veterinarian when I first got her. And the veterinarian wasn't sure what gender, but she called in her assistant or whatever. Her assistant said, "Oh, that's a girl." So I'm going by that.
I think it's really hard to tell. I'm not surprised that the vet didn't know. I think unless they're sitting on eggs or you see them lay the eggs. And even I think sometimes the mates will sit on the eggs depending on the species. But obviously, if you only have one bird and you find eggs in the net in the cage, you know it's a female bird. But otherwise, I think it's tough.
Well, I'm just going to wait and see what happens.
All right, a lot of news to talk about. Arlen calling in, of course, from California. So the big primary, I guess tomorrow is considered Super Tuesday. I'm really confused about all this terminology. We're going to talk about the California races in a moment. You can see I put together that promo. It's a little, muddied because of the way I copied it over. I think it looks better on YouTube. But anyway, Arlen saying they're all good. And I said, no, thanks. And we'll get into why I'm pretty unhappy with all three, although I could accept two of them. One I think is an absolute nightmare disaster, one of the worst people on the planet. But before we get to Adam Schiff and the other two, Arlen, you do feel, just billboard it, you're happy with them, right? You think these guys, they're all pretty good.
I do. And by the way, there's really about 20 candidates on the Democratic side. I just filled out my ballot. I just dropped it in the mailbox to be picked up by the mailman, and I hope I get it there on time. Anyway, but those three have been at the top ever since the beginning of this campaign: Schiff, Porter, and Barbara Lee. And as far as I could tell, I looked at all of them. They're all good. I think you might have trouble with Adam Schiff. He's not. He's got a few flaws, but I think he's going to be the one that's going to end up being in first place because he's got a lot of money and he's exposed on the news a lot. He gets lots of publicity, and he was on the January 6th commission in Congress, so I expect him to win. But I think if Porter or Barbara Lee won, that would be great too, but I doubt.
Well, one of the other two will almost certainly square off against Schiff.
No,
in November. It's a top two primary, so
no. From what I understand, Steve Garvey, the Republican candidate, could be second, but it doesn't matter. He'll lose if it's a battle against him, against Schiff, or anybody
Well, no,
else.
it really matters. It matters a ton, Arlen, because if it's Garvey versus Schiff, then really there's two very, very well. I probably, if I was in that, I wouldn't vote at all, but I might prefer Garvey. It's possible. I'd have to see what Garvey says about the Ukraine war and about.
Garvey's awful.
Schiff is one of the most corrupt members of Congress. He's completely bought and paid for by the defense industry. He lied about Trump repeatedly. He's never come clean about his grandstanding and the damage he did as part of the first impeachment proceedings. He's awful. I mean, he's one of the major problems in Congress. And I know you totally disagree with that, Arlen. I'll give you a chance to respond. But before we get there, and I think this is relevant to why Schiff is such a bad candidate. The Supreme Court just said no to the lawsuit trying to block Trump from the ballot. For all the work, all the effort, all the energy that Adam Schiff and others have done to try to demonize Trump, to make Trump look like the other. Schiff obviously motivated in part because Trump cut off some supply of arms to Ukraine, one of his pet countries, Ukraine. Trump is in better shape than he might otherwise be because of the witch hunt that Adam Schiff led, is he not? I mean, when Arlen, when Trump's supporters, whine and complain about how he's a victim, they can point to the nonsense that Schiff helped lead in Congress, can they not?
Well, first of all, Hal, none of us are surprised that the Supreme Court rules in favor of Trump. They always do. They're very generous in giving Trump all kinds of gifts, and whatever Trump wants, he gets from them. They're
it
like
was unanimous. It included all three. The Democratic nominees, appointees, also went with. They just said, "Hey, we live in a democracy. If people don't like Trump, then they are welcome to vote against him. If they think he's an insurrectionist, they can vote against him. If they don't like his policies, they can vote against him." I don't get what's wrong with that. Shouldn't the people get to decide who their president is?
Yeah, normally they should. But when you have a constitution, which we're supposed to abide by, the Constitution says if you led an insurrection, that you shouldn't be on the ballot, then that's pretty darn clear. It's spelled out very quickly, very obviously, I think, in the Constitution, and we should follow that.
Well, assuming he was responsible for that insurrection, if you want to call him an insurrectionist, and I mean, there's even a dispute, Arlen, as to whether it was a real insurrection. I mean, was there really a plan to take over the government? I mean, you can argue back and forth. What I would say this, if that's true, then why wasn't there a conviction? It seems to me you've got to have some due process. Trump is entitled to process. If you're going to say you can't run for president, there has to be some process due him so that he can fight the argument that he's an insurrectionist. And there's been no trial. There's been no prosecution saying you're an insurrectionist. Yes, I think the case in Georgia is the strongest. But that's all now mired down and because of prosecutorial misconduct and mistakes. So it seems to me if the burden's on the governing party, the Democrats, if they have the courage of their convictions, instead of bringing lawsuits, file criminal charges against him and convict him.
I'm surprised now. Like you're not paying attention or something. Remember a guy named Jack Smith, who's been trying to push the investigation of the January 6th insurrection, and the Supreme Court keeps pushing him away, and he's not, now looks like it may not even come to pass. But the evidence is out there, he's got it, but the trouble is it's the justice system that doesn't let Jack Smith give his case. And if he does give all the evidence, I think it'd be obvious that Trump should be prosecuted for it.
Well, you make a good point. I can't argue with that. Part of the reason there hasn't been a criminal prosecution where a jury would get to decide, and I think that's what Trump's entitled to, is a jury. But the reason in part is because the Supreme Court did punt and send this down the road. Now, my question, though, would be, why wait so long? Why didn't, usually you say a speedy prosecution, speedy trial. We knew about October 6th, January 6th, October 7th. I get these things confused. We knew about it on January 6th. And it didn't stop grandstander Jamie Raskin from trying to get Trump impeached. And that failed. No. But the same exact evidence that Raskin relied on, which many believe was so powerful and so conclusive, could have easily been brought in a trial in 2021, 2022. It didn't have to wait until, what was it, last year when Jack Smith finally started to bring charges.
Well, I can explain that, Hal. And from the last thing I posted about Merrick Arlen, it's the Attorney General who's responsible for prosecuting this case, and he dragged his feet because he's an incompetent Attorney General, and that's why by the time Jack Smith got aboard, it was already late, and he's been pushed back, and the Supreme Court keeps pushing all those cases back so they won't come up before the election, which would be terrible, because if Trump gets away with being held accountable for all his crimes and he becomes president, well, then he'll just pardon himself, and he won't.
Well, should the American public be penalized because Merrick Garland dragged his heels, assuming that there's enough to convict Trump? And I think that's obviously an open question, in my opinion. But assuming there is, why should the American public, 45% or so, who seem to want Trump to be the next president, why should they be penalized and not have that opportunity to vote for him?
Well, they should have an opportunity to vote for him after they see what happens to the trials, and if he's held accountable. He's got 91 felonies. If he gets prosecuted for some of them, that may make a difference. But if the justice system is pushing back and not allowing these things to come to pass, then a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand why he's able to get away with all that. They think, well, maybe he might be innocent, but the evidence is far against, far on the side against Trump. I mean, he's just had so many criminal, things that he should be prosecuted for, and he's just not able.
I think, again, the election fraud charges in Georgia are by far the strongest, and I'm sorry that those are on hold, in part because of prosecutorial misconduct and worse. I mean, it's very unfortunate. I don't really feel like Trump's even been prejudiced. He's just lucky. He's just very fortunate that the Fulton County DA gave her boyfriend the plum job of prosecuting Trump, because it didn't even hurt Trump. I mean, I don't see any real prejudice to him, but still, I guess it looks kind of weird. It looks kind of, it was certainly, if I were a taxpayer in Fulton County, Georgia, I'd be pretty irritated that my tax money is going to this guy who takes my DA out on, vacations and things. But
well, Hal, he's not the one that's being prosecuted. Trump is the one being prosecuted. What they do, with the prosecutor and Fannie Willis do is not really that important.
I agree. I agree 100% on that, Arlen. I don't think it hurt Trump. I don't think he was prejudiced unfairly, and I think it's very unfortunate that this is delaying. And I think it's delaying justice, and it's unfortunate. But I don't know what we do now. I mean, this is what happened. It happened. It happened because Fannie Willis showed really bad judgment. If I were an appeals court, I wouldn't want to delay trial for a second. But these are clever defense lawyers; they're highly paid, and it's certainly redounding to the benefit of Trump. And again, I think that's very unfortunate. For all my sympathy for Trump voters and my belief that they're unfairly smeared by elites, that doesn't mean I'm not sympathetic to the view that this guy who tried to steal an election should be prosecuted for it.
There's no doubt that he tried to steal the election. We've all heard the phone call of him begging for 11,000 plus votes from the Secretary of State in Georgia. I mean, it's an obvious open and shut case. And, I'm hoping that, it'll come to trial, but, there's a lot of forces that seem against, holding Trump accountable. So, by the way, I thought I heard something about maybe there's going to be some ruling about that case in Georgia, but I don't know. So we'll just have to
All
wait.
right, real quick, Arlen, I put up this quote by Thomas Jefferson. The tree, I said this to my son, when people are all agog, how dare anyone go into Congress? How dare they run the hall, ramble through the halls? And I have this quote, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. It's natural manure. So I bring that up because where I am really frustrated beyond everything else is the way the Democrats in Congress, rather than express immediate sympathy for the January 6th rioters and say, you shouldn't have broken in, you broke laws, but we're listening to you. We understand we haven't been responsive to the American people. We understand that we're corrupt. When Trump called us a swamp, he had a good point. Not that he's any better. We're not going to say that. But you do deserve health care, every single one of you. You deserve to have good jobs. And we have fallen down on the job, and we vow to do better. Thank you for the wake-up call. That's what the Democrats should have said. And if they had said that, I, for one, would have a lot more sympathy for them. And not only that, I think they would be in a much better position to win this election and others going forward.
No, Hal. The problem with the January 6th thing is it has nothing to do with what the Democrats did. It's what Donald Trump and the Republicans did. They denied the results of an election, then said, no, Trump really won and Biden stole it. That's the main reason they were there. They believed Trump. And they went in there. We've all seen it on TV. They stormed the place. They tried to, hang Mike Pence and do all kinds of horrible things. It has nothing to do with the Democrats. It has to do with Trump and the Republicans who won't accept the American public believed,
well, we totally disagree on this. If the American public had reason to believe that the Democrats were on their side, that the Democrats were not part of the military-industrial complex and against American workers, then I don't think they would have protested. I don't think they would have rioted. But maybe they would have. Maybe, let me just finish. Maybe they would have. Maybe they are just following a Pied Piper who's Trump. But regardless, why not, if you're a Democrat, come clean and say, you know what, you're right. We are bought and paid for. We are corrupt. It's money that talks, and everyone else we ignore, we disrespect, we couldn't care less about you. And we're sorry, and we're going to try to do better. Maybe that's not why people were in the halls of Congress. But why not assume the best of the people of your constituents? Why not assume that they're there because they really have legitimate grievances against you, which they in fact do have?
I mean, come on. The American people had a chance to see what the Democrats did and what the Republicans did, and they voted for Joe Biden. I too have problems with the Democratic Party, but Joe Biden won the election, and that was obvious. And it's obvious Trump tried to steal it and try to get his people to storm into the Capitol and change the results of the election. That's inexcusable, and
I agree that that's inexcusable, but that doesn't mean that the Democrats couldn't have used this as an opportunity, just as what Israel should have used the October 7 as a opportunity to say, you know what, we're sorry, we have persecuted you, we have kept you in an open-air prison in a concentration camp for over 20 years. We can understand why you would have rebelled and riot, and sent your terrorists into Israel to kill people. We're going to try to do better. I mean, why not take opportunities where you can to become better than you were?
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Hal. I have a lot of the same problems with the Democrats and what they've done and what they should be doing. But still, it doesn't change the fact that Trump would be a hell of a lot worse, and would not solve any of these problems. And it's more likely, the Democrats we have to push and pressure the Democrats to do more. No question about it. We have to push Biden to do more about, By the way, I noticed something really nice, and that was Kamala Harris said she supports a 6-week ceasefire. I think that's a good sign right there.
Do you think that, and by the way, I just put up there the California presidential primary is tomorrow. We may go long, if Arlen will indulge me, we may go longer today than usual because there's a lot to get to with the race and the candidates. And I really want to delve into it more deeply, although we haven't started there yet. I did see that about Kamala Harris, and my thought on that, let me see what you think, Arlen, is this could be a trial balloon being floated by the Democratic elite establishment, the power brokers, to see whether there's some real positive response to Harris's statement. And maybe they're thinking, can we replace Biden with Harris? One of the big reasons, obviously, Biden is struggling, beyond the raw popular vote numbers, but within certainly Michigan and maybe a few other states, is how badly he's struggling with young voters, and specifically in Michigan, Arab American and Muslim American and Palestinian American voters. Maybe they figure if we have Kamala come out and seem more sympathetic, we can grab some of those votes back.
Well, that's quite possible. I think, I think we got still, like I always say, a few more months until the November election. I think Trump is just, having all kinds of problems. I think his dementia is coming out more and more. He's, misquoting lots of people. He's getting confused about the names. He's not sure if he ran against Kamala Harris or, Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton. He's very confused about a lot of things. And I think his age is showing maybe more than Biden. And Biden has done a pretty damn good job as president. The results have been pretty good, I think.
Let it lie there. Arlen, the one thing I miss about California is it was so easy to vote. It's so easy. So you voted, correct? How did you vote? By what means?
Got my absentee ballot, filled it out, put it in the envelope, and I just dropped it off in my mailbox to be picked up. Very easy. I
used to vote by absentee ballot also, Arlen, but I would drop it off at the precincts. They used to have all sorts of opportunities. Maybe just on election day you could just walk in and drop it off. But I remember there were various ways. It seemed very, very easy, and I always appreciated that. There seems fewer opportunities here in Maryland. Of course, I still vote, but do you want to divulge for whom you voted in that Senate race, or are you going to keep that a secret? It was tough, Hal. As I've told you, I like the top three candidates. I think between Schiff, Porter, and Lee, they're all very good. I voted for Porter. I really like, her ideas and, her as a person. And so I voted for her, but I really think Schiff is going to win. And I'm okay with that. Schiff will be a good senator. He seems, to get better all the time. He's more forceful and strong. And, if he continues that way, I think he'll be a good senator. So, Arlen, you had said that you think there's a chance Steve Garvey will be second place. Is that? I didn't see that. I thought, is that right? He's that close, huh? Well, he's the only real Republican that anybody's looking at. So there are Republicans in California, and the Democrats are splitting their vote three ways. So it's understandable where he might come in second, but he's really an awful candidate. He has nothing to offer. He's just a former baseball player. And if you see him on the debates, as I have, he doesn't do very well. So I don't think it'd be a problem at all for whoever the Democrat is to win in California, because this is a Democratic state, and we're not going to vote for Garvey. I want to go look at those numbers. Because I'm sure you're right, but I wanted to see it because I've been kind of consoling myself with the likelihood of a Schiff win by the hope that either Porter or Lee, neither of whom I think is ideal, but both of whom are significantly less bad and maybe even kind of good, would be, I can console myself. Well, at least we can push for Porter or Lee. But I'm looking at this latest poll. It does look like Porter and Garvey were pretty much tied, but now Garvey's taken a slight lead over Porter. So what I'm going to do, I hate to do this, I'm going to urge people, if you're inclined to vote for Barbara Lee, at this point, vote for Katie Porter, because we've got to stop Schiff. Schiff is a very, very bad person. He's a corrupt person. He's a warmonger. He's a liar. There's really nothing good to be said about Adam Schiff, in my opinion. So please, please, please vote for, I guess at this point, the only way to stop him is to vote for Katie Porter.
Just vote for whoever, any Democrat, over any Republican, obviously. And by the way, I've seen a lot of commercials about Steve Garvey. Unfortunately, they're all against Steve Garvey and how he's, mostly a Trump type Republican. So, I don't think he's got much of a chance.
Well, why? Who's running? So they're running negative ads against him?
Yeah. Probably Schiff has a lot of money, and he's probably the one behind it. I don't know that, but
I would doubt Schiff would be running ads against Garvey because he's got to like Garvey, right? Garvey helps him out because if Garvey's second, he knows he'll win. He's an absolute shoo-in in the general if it's him against Garvey.
We know for sure it's the Democrat. A Democrat is going to be the next U.S. Senator in California. So, and I think you're underrating Schiff. I think Schiff has come on.
I'm not underrating him. I'm terrified of him. I'm not underrating him. I think he probably will win. I'm just saying the only reason I have been able to console myself with this race is that hoping, even with Schiff leading, is that hopefully, either Porter or Lee, more likely Porter, I think she's well ahead of Lee at this point, would be able to maybe overcome. And also getting the progressive vote could coalesce around Katie Porter as well. So those are the hopes. Not that I love Katie Porter by any means. I mean, this is Katie Porter's, Katie Porter had a chance to endorse somebody who was pretty good 2020, not perfect, but pretty good. And instead she endorsed Elizabeth Warren. So they're all awful. Arlen, here you go. Adam Schiff spearheaded the first Trump impeachment, and Republicans booted him from the Intelligence Committee, claimed he advanced politically motivated lies about Trump. So I say that's true. You're saying he didn't lie about Trump. Is that right? You think he was telling the truth about Trump?
Of course he was. He went after Trump, and that's why people like him. He was willing to stand up to, all the corrupt Republicans.
Well, don't you think the reason that people like him is because they don't really care what the truth is about Trump? If they're Trump haters, if they have Trump derangement syndrome, no matter what you say about Donald Trump, if it's negative, they're going to be happy about it. That's like you. I mean, the truth that the Mueller investigation turned up zero evidence of collusion.
Wrong.
There was the only charges were obstruction of justice. Not one witness said, "Oh yes, we were colluding with Russia." Not one witness said, "Oh yeah, Donald Trump was colluding with Putin." Not one. Michael Cohen, by the way, even said, for all he sang like a bird, he sang like a canary, he couldn't come up with any evidence to support the claim that Trump conspired with Russia.
You're absolutely wrong, Hal, as you sometimes are. I think the Mueller report did, show a lot of instances where, Trump got a lot of help from Russia, and they may not have been able to say it was collusion per se.
Well, that was the charge. Foreign governments are allowed. There were a few guys in T-shirts in basements in Moscow who may have been typing out on Facebook posts. That's about it. That happens in every election. That's nothing compared to what we've done, where we fomented revolutions all over the world and undermined democratic norms in countries.
No question about that, Hal. We've done it, and we've done it worse. But still, Russians put a lot of effort into electing Trump in 2016 and 2020. They're continuing to do it because they like.
Well, Trump. Even if that were true, and I don't believe the evidence supports that claim.
It is. There's lots of evidence.
Well, we disagree strongly. In fact, I'd say the evidence clearly doesn't. But even if it were true, so what? That doesn't mean Trump committed any crimes. You have to show what the charges were. This Russia had something on Trump, the P tape, all of that made up. The Steele dossier was fabricated by somebody who was in the pay of the DNC in 2016 at the time. It's all been debunked, and they came up with nothing. There were no prosecutions that demonstrated that he was actually in thrall in any way to Russia.
You must have been listening to Bill
Barr. Arlen.
You must have been listening to Bill Barr, who came out early and gave his interpretation of what the Mueller report was, and he was inaccurate, and he, very much pro-Trump. And it took a while, until the actual report came out. And there was a lot of information in the Mueller report that showed a lot of the bad things, a lot of the corruption of what Donald Trump did and the help he got from Russia. And I'll have to send some.
There was corruption, Arlen. Of course, there's this good race for president. There's always going to be corruption, but the fact is, there were zero witnesses, no hard evidence where anyone came forward with either documentation, emails, anything where Trump and either Putin or any high-level or even low-level Russian person were plotting anything, shared any information. Again, Michael Cohen, who was the biggest source of evidence, flat out said, I don't have anything. I have no evidence. And also, dossier said that Michael Cohen had gone to Czechoslovakia to get money. That was a payoff. That was one of the things in the Steele dossier, which was proven not to be the case. It just didn't happen. He wasn't in Czechoslovakia at the time that Steele said he was there, and Schiff said that there was nothing untrue in the Steele dossier.
All right, there were problems there, of course, but the information. I've been fighting with all the right wingers on Halitics on your Facebook page. Keep saying, oh, there's nothing that shows that Russia helped Trump. But there's tons of information that they put in a lot of effort to help Trump. And in fact, the Senate Republican investigative committee came out with a report and said, yeah, there were a lot of help from Russia to help Trump. And I'll just have to send it to you because I think you must. Well,
I'm not going to argue that point, but whether Russia did or did not help Trump, and I mean, when we say Russia, do you mean a few Russians in T-shirts and white T-shirts in their basements
no.
in a Moscow apartment? Or do you mean there was some sort of concerted effort by the Putin regime to help Trump?
I would say the latter. I think the Putin
there's no evidence to support that. There just isn't. There just isn't evidence to support that.
Everything, Trump has never said anything bad, anything negative about Putin. He's only praised him. And of course, Putin's going to like what, Trump is doing. And he very much wants Trump to be the person who is president.
But that's not evidence of a conspiracy, Arlen. That's not evidence of a conspiracy.
I'll send you the evidence.
Well, do me a favor. If you're going to send me the evidence, quote specifically in the email what the evidence is. In other words, John Smith met with prosecutors on this date and told them this. That not like some 500-page document, which might or might not be, that I'm supposed to wade through.
I'll send you the evidence, Hal.
Okay.
You'll change your mind.
All right. And well, will you change yours? I actually will change my mind. I will be I promise you. If you provide some documentation of a witness or material evidence that shows that somebody with knowledge who should have had knowledge can say, yes, this happened on this date, I'll change my mind. I'll say, okay, I was wrong. It looks like there was something there. But will you change your mind if you don't have that? If you can't come up with that, will you say, you know what? Yeah, maybe Russia wanted Trump because Russia doesn't want war with the United States. And frankly, I don't want war with Russia either. So maybe the fact that Russia supported Trump was actually a reason to support Trump because, we all would prefer not to have war with Russia.
Well, if I'm wrong, of course, I will admit I'm wrong. But I've seen all the evidence, and it's pretty obvious to me that there's a lot of it. And we'll talk about it next week. And I expect you may have to do a little apologizing. I mean, no offense, but,
Well, I've seen what you've posted, and I've seen what a lot of people post. And I know there are luminaries and, really smart people like Rachel Maddow who have been banging this drum forever. And I remember her saying, oh, we've got the Trump tax returns and we've got, Mueller's going to show us all how bad Trump is. And none of that ever happened. I remember the TYT guy, Cenk, saying, oh, yeah, Trump's going to resign from office. He'll never even serve out his first term. Well, he served out his first term. So I heard a lot of people say things and none of them came true.
Well, you see under my name there, it says pundit thought leader. I try to live up to that. So I do my investigating, I do my research, and I'll just have to prove it to you.
All right. Well, I'll say the same for me. All right. Let's get to just a little more. And you know what? This is so frustrating for me. I think sometimes when I do these slide decks, what happens is either I don't save them correctly or something happens where I put stuff in there and then they're not there, which is very, very aggravating. Because I did have a couple of quotes about Schiff that I wanted to share, but let me just put this up because I'm glad I have this. To me, this alone is a good enough reason not to vote against Adam Schiff. And this is just a couple days ago. Going to continue to defend Israel's right to defend itself. And we know that Israel isn't defending itself right now, Arlen. We know what Israel's doing is committing genocide or at a minimum genocidal acts. So I'm trying to understand, how could somebody who is supporting Israel's, just flat out murdering Palestinians, how can you say they're a good person? How can you say they're a good candidate when that's what they're supporting? Like one of the great evils of our time. This is a true moral test of our country, and we failed it 100%. We've got a 0 on it on this test.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Hal. I don't know why he's supporting Israel, but I think it's the wrong position to be in, and Israel needs to back off. Biden hasn't been strong enough pushing against Netanyahu, and he should. So, we're in agreement on that, and I'm hoping that it'll happen, pretty soon. I think the Democrats are starting to really want a ceasefire. They're really starting to see that it's hurting them, and I hope to see more of that.
Yeah, well, me too. I mean, for whatever the reason is, and obviously it's not moral. It's not like we actually care about the people that Israel's murdering, because they don't. But even if we care about losing an election, well, I guess that's something to give them some credit for. But I just want to go through, because there's a little more to just talk about Adam Schiff here and how bad a person he really is. So he's telling Jewish JNS, I think is the magazine, why he's against a ceasefire. This is just in the past few weeks. He speaks out against a ceasefire in Gaza, horrified by the barbarism of the attack, the scale of it, the mass murder and rape and torture. He doesn't mention all the dead Palestinians, the 30,000 plus Palestinians that Israel's killed, which is about 30 times as many as Hamas killed. But I circled or squared their rape because does he not understand that all the rape allegations have been debunked? That just like Russiagate, it didn't happen. And you can argue that Russiagate happened, but there's just nothing there. There's no there when it comes to the allegation of rapes by Hamas. It just all fallen apart, that argument, those claims, I should say.
I haven't really heard what Schiff has to say lately about the situation in Gaza and Israel and all that. So there's nothing much I can say right now. But if he hasn't changed his mind, then he's making a mistake.
Well, this came out long after the allegations have largely been debunked. So it's really frustrating. And I just want to show real quick. This is one of the authors of the New York Times piece, Screams Without Words, that supposedly, I'm going to talk much more about this tomorrow, but I just wanted to just quote from what she said, and this is from The Intercept, but it's been widely reported. So Anat Schwartz, and remember, this is Adam Schiff, one of your candidates tomorrow. Please, please, please don't vote for him, is justifying the ongoing slaughter of Gazans by the claim of their rapists, right? Anat Schwartz, who wrote the piece for the New York Times, said that she spoke to all these people and no one had met a victim of sexual assault. She spoke to a ton of people as well, and none of them had evidence. There's no hard evidence. There's no forensic evidence. There's some eyewitnesses who aren't credible. So for me, the fact that Schiff, who, by the way, is a darling of the defense industry, is championing more war, couldn't be a stronger reason to vote against him.
Well, I don't think it's as bad as you say, Hal. I mean, definitely what happened on October 7th was horrible, and there were horrible things done, and there were war crimes committed. And I don't think there's any doubt about it. But I'll look into it and see what.
Well, there's doubt there's no evidence that there were widespread rapes or even any rapes. I did show a video of a woman, and it was very upsetting, and I don't deny it at all, Shani Lauk, and she was, it looked very sexualized. She was wearing a very, very revealing dress. That was the dress she had been wearing. Nobody put her in that dress. She was wearing it, but it looked really upsetting. It was probably her corpse you saw. I'm not denying it. It was horrific. But the post-October 7 claims of widespread rapes, that just simply has been demonstrated to be false. And even if they were true, which they're not, it wouldn't. Schiff would be still a monster, an absolute monster to support Israel in these times. It's akin to supporting the Nazis in 1940. It's the same thing.
Yeah, well, I don't know for sure what Schiff is saying these days, so I'm just going to be quiet.
Well, he says he's against the ceasefire. He's against the ceasefire, Arlen.
What is doing. We're doing. We're in the wrong place at the wrong time about Israel, and something has to be done to change that.
Agreed, but I'm taking on your argument that Schiff is somehow a decent, good person that we should support. From Politico, they have some listing of his earmarks. These are the earmarks. He would set aside, when they were doing earmarks, some money in budgets for companies in his district. Look where they went. Smith's Detection for chemical weapon sensors, $9 million. They donated upholstery, $8,500 to his campaign. Eureka Aerospace for military technology, $1 million. Tanner Research detecting IEDs, more military spending. This is who Adam Schiff is. He is a friend and ally of the murderous military-industrial complex. That's why he went after Trump. Because remember when Trump held up the shipment of arms to Ukraine, Arlen? That cost Schiff's financiers money, his backers, his supporters. It cost them money. So they weren't happy with it. So, hey, let's prosecute him. Let's go after him. Why not?
Well, we totally disagree, of course, about Ukraine. I think we really we have to support Ukraine. Otherwise, we're going to let Russia go in there and take over Ukraine. And that would be, a very aggressive,
we don't let them take it over. They don't even want it. Putin doesn't want Ukraine. He wants a buffer. He wants a buffer between Ukraine and Russia. And what we should be doing right now is negotiating with him to stop the killing. And I do give the Republican Party credit because they're stopping the endless supply of weaponry of death and mass destruction to Ukraine. So hopefully this will finally bring about some peace.
Are you going to tell me that Putin's going to go in there to beat Ukraine and not take over that country and put their
that's
people
why
in
we
power?
need to be negotiating. That's why we need to be we have to have talks with Russia right now and talk about how we can resolve this without any more casualties. I mean, they prolong it.
I don't think Putin's going to give up much, if anything. He likes getting in there.
He won't give up. Right. That's true. We had an opportunity early on to stop, hopefully, the killing. We forewent it over the summer. We know that Blinken went to Finland and said, we're not going to stop the war. We can't stop until Russia withdraws. They're not going to. You just said it. They're not going to withdraw. So let's try to end the killing now instead of keep it going. Which this brings me to why I don't like any of the candidates. Porter and Lee both have also voted for more aid, more military supplies to Ukraine. So they're warmongers too in this case.
We can't just abandon Ukraine. That would be totally wrong. You got all of Western Europe realizes how important it is to stop Putin so he doesn't get in there and take over and then go on to other countries, because he wants to build up Russia to where it used to be when they were the USSR. He wants to make Russia stronger, more powerful country with a lot more territories and influence, and we can't let them get away with that.
Well, how many Ukrainians should we be prepared to see? How many more Ukrainians should we be prepared to sacrifice? How much more of Ukraine should we see laid waste to? How many more women should become? How many more widows and orphans do we want to see made in Ukraine?
We agree. Peace talks would be great if it were possible to actually get peace. I would be all totally for it. I just don't. I think you're being very generous to Putin if you think that he's going to give up anything. I don't think.
I don't want more people killed. I'm the same as Trump on this one. I don't want to see more dead people.
I don't either.
Well, then we should be pushing for peace, not criticizing the Republicans for refusing to authorize more weapons of mass destruction to be sent over to Kiev.
Well, you don't want to. You don't want to just give up on Ukraine and let Russia take over, do you? Do you want them to take over the country?
See, you always present it as though those are the only two alternatives, and you always just completely gloss over what I've said repeatedly, which is we need to be pushing with India and we need to be pushing with China for peace, for some kind of ceasefire and an end to the killing. And we've done none of that. We've, in fact, famously refused to even engage when Russia and India were calling for some kind of a ceasefire. We refused to even join them.
Well, I just can't see how we would abandon Ukraine and let Russia take over.
We're abandoning the people of Ukraine to be slaughtered. Well, again, the country's falling apart. We've seen whenever the U.S. sort of takes over these proxy war type situations, whether it was Vietnam in the 60s, Afghanistan in the last decades, the countries are hollowed out, and then they become completely incapable of standing on their own, and then ultimately they collapse. That's what happened in Vietnam. That's what happened in Afghanistan, and that's exactly what's happening in Ukraine right now.
Yeah, no, you're right. Every war we've had since probably World War II has been, unjustified. But there is a big difference between the places you just said, Iraq and Vietnam and so on and so forth. And that is that we did not invade Russia or Ukraine. It was Putin and the Russians that did. So that's the big difference.
Well, there's a lot of argument that maybe we didn't invade with our military, but our neocons were in Ukraine, were in Kiev, were infiltrating the government, where we deposed helped depose a not even pro-Russian President Yanukovych, but at least helped usher him out. And he wasn't even that pro-Russia, to be perfectly honest. That we helped corrupt the Ukraine government, with the Beau Biden stuff, not Joe, but Beau Biden, with the way it became kind of a petro state or an oil and gas state. So I'm willing to accept that, yes, of course, and I wouldn't even argue, of course, Putin is far from blameless. Of course, Russia isn't blameless. But we also provoked Russia. We also have to understand that this is a country with an enormous border on Russia, that Russia has been invaded through Ukraine with tremendous negative consequences to Russia in recent years, and more than once. I mean, in the Second World War, the First World War, Napoleon, they all saw German armies or French armies laying waste to Russia. And I don't think it's appropriate for us to just pretend that's not all part of the history here.
Well, Al, unfortunately, I didn't hear much of what you said the last minute or so, because the military-industrial complex has taken over the Monterey airport and is sending out very noisy jets.
I heard it. I heard there was something coming back from there. I just said that it's a two-way street. It's not just Putin. We're not innocent. We have done a lot in there to provoke Russia as well.
Yeah, but none of that is justification for Putin to go in there and just invade a sovereign country like Ukraine.
It may not justify it. Fine, we can argue what's justification and what's not. But we're in a bad situation. How do we stop it? How do we end it without more death, carnage, and just, trench warfare that could last for another decade?
Well, we certainly agree about that, and we agree about Gaza. We want to stop all this killing and fighting, and innocent people getting, the ones that are being killed. The question is just how do we do it? And we're going to get a cooperation from the other side with whatever we decide to do.
So, Arlen, let me see if I can get that messy looking slide off the screen there. There we go. There we go. So, do you have more you want to say about the primary tomorrow? I think Arlen, I don't know if he said it, but I'll say it. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but rather than being negative, I'm going to say if you're going to vote in the Democratic primary, please do vote for Katie Porter. I'm not saying I like her better or less than
Barbara Lee, and I think Schiff will be totally acceptable. He may have some problems. He may have done some things wrong, but I think overall he's a good candidate, a very strong candidate. He went against Trump very forcefully. He went against the MAGA people in Congress very forcefully, and I think he will be a strong senator, especially compared to the one we used to have, Feinstein, who didn't do much of anything, actually.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's, I mean, that's kind of a pretty soft comparison for whoever you're comparing to her. Arlen, being maybe better than Feinstein is damning with faint praise. I'd have to say, but we really are just miles apart on Adam Schiff. I see nothing. I see nothing. Redeeming about him.
Most likely he will be the senator, and then we'll find out for sure.
Well, I mean, we won't find out for sure because we'll still disagree. He'll vote for more money for Ukraine war, and you'll think it's a principled stance, and I'll say he's paying off his campaign backers, his campaign financiers. He'll continue to condemn Trump, and I'll just say it's grandstanding and it's irrelevant to whether he's doing. In fact, I think all the attacks on Trump make things worse. They divide us when we should be. When I look to our leaders to unite us on the issues that really matter: jobs, healthcare, the environment, and Adam Schiff hasn't done any of that.
Well, he hasn't had the power to do it yet, but. Definitely Joe Biden has done and worked for all those things, the environment, he's improved the economy. There's so many, he's done so many good things and he's not getting credit for it. But, I think the economy definitely is improving, and he's going to have his State of the Union address, I think, tomorrow night. And hopefully he'll do a good job and promote what he's done so far and, talk about what an awful situation we'll be in if we have a dictator like Trump in office as president again.
All right, Arlen. See, this is where I start to get depressed because I feel like I just speak and I make my points and I think I'm persuasive and I think that I have the evidence behind me. I went to law school. I like to marshal my facts. And it's like, I feel like it just bounces off your head like a rock off of a rock hard skull. So I don't know what to do. Arlen. I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way. I mean, I know a lot of people can't even understand. Remember, we had that debate about whether Trump was the worst president ever. You were astonished, as was, I think, Carl, that I would even say he wasn't. I mean, maybe you've pulled back a little bit from that position, but not by much. I don't know how you could look at Schiff's record. I'll be honest with you. Don't know how you can look at someone with all those earmarks for military contractors, military suppliers, somebody who's all in for more spending on war, who is against the people of Gaza. I don't know. That depresses me. It really depresses me that someone of that ilk you view as somehow good and somebody who would be a good senator. I don't know. I can't see the word good associated with someone who's backing what Israel's doing right now. And I know you'll say, well, we agree, but I don't see how that can be about Israel, but I don't know how that can even be good at all. How could you be a good person and support what Israel's doing? I guess is my question.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion, Hal, and a lot of your opinions I do agree with. But when it comes to, for instance, the presidential race that'll be coming up in November, we can't let Trump become president again. I think our democracy would disappear. He would, become a dictator and pardon himself for all of his crimes and do horrible things that I think would ruin our country. And so I think we have to get behind people like Biden, and I think Schiff will do better than I think you think.
Well, I hear what you're saying. All right, so let's get to, before we go, we got about 10 minutes. I know I said we might go a little long, but maybe we'll be able to cut this off at 3. We got through everything, unless you have more you want to say, because you've made your points about the primary. Are there any specific issues? Because I don't really know anything about Steve Garvey. I do hope somehow Katie Porter does pull in front of him, because I think that is possible. It is close between. We'll see. You know, a lot of times with the what do you call it? The samples or the polling in advance, they're off by some measure of the margin of error. So it may be that the results will be different than we expect, but it does look right now like it's going to be Schiff and then probably Garvey, but maybe Porter.
Yeah, I think whoever it is, I think the Democrat is going to win, and I'll be happy with that.
I was disappointed to see, Arlen, you said there's a ton of candidates. Maybe we can just show this for a moment. I put all the candidates together in my slide deck, but of course I had to have a lot of different slides. So here's the list of Democrats. We'll go down the whole list. So on that page, you have one we've heard of, we talked about, of the 3 we've discussed, is Barbara Lee. There's 5 other names. Have you heard of any of these people? Arlen? Seppi Jelani, Harmesh Kumar, Christina Pascucci, if I said that right. If not, I apologize. David Peterson, that's a little easier for me to get that right, and Douglas Pierce. Are any of those people you've heard of?
No, I haven't heard of any of them.
And you live in California, so presumably you know about 30-40% of the people who live in California. You might have known one of them. Let's go to the next list. Here we go. Katie Porter. Here's 2 names we've discussed. Katie Porter at the top, Schiff at the bottom. But then Perry Pound, Raji Robb, John Rose. John Rose, an office manager. Maybe it's time for an office manager in Congress, Arlen.
Yeah, I don't know how big of an office he runs, but we'll have to look into that. But
it's kind of amazing. It's super easy. Okay, so the reason, kind of the relevance of all this, it's super easy to get on the ballot in the in what they call the jungle primary. You just have to pay a couple $1,000, really, as I see it, and maybe get 50 to 60 signatures. See if I can get those. I was so surprised at how easy it was. I actually noted that. Here we go. So the requirements for U.S. Senate, Arlen, did you know it was this easy? You may have. You probably know better than I do. But if you look at that, filing requirements for U.S. Senate candidates in California, 65 to 100. I thought, what are they saying? 65,100? That would make sense. No. 65, and then you pay $3,500. So yeah, an office manager can do it. It's pretty amazing. Do you think that makes sense, that it should be that easy to get on this ballot, Arlen?
I'm used to seeing lots of people on our ballots, and yeah, it's ridiculous. I think it looks like people with money like to have their name on the ballot, makes them feel good, but they're not going to have any chance of winning. And, you know, it's kind of ridiculous, but that's just the way our system works. And I agree, it's stupid.
And then for the Congress, that was Senate, which is what we've been talking about. For Congress, you only need 40 to 60 signatures and $1,740 filing fee. So California makes it really easy to get on their ballots. There needs to be a better process for winnowing out. I don't like it when it's too hard, but I don't like it when it's too easy either.
By the way, do you have the ballot for president there on the Democratic ticket?
I didn't put that together, Arlen. No.
There's maybe a dozen people that I recall that were on the ballot besides, Joe Biden. And I thought the one that was most amusing was one who was right next to Joe Biden on the ballot, and his first name was President.
I saw that. I did see President is on the ballot. Well, here are the rest of the names, because we still didn't get through all those Senate people. So I think I showed 12. Here's another 12. So 24 names if I added them correctly. You see more Republicans, and then you see the non-Democrats, non-duopoly candidates, one from the American Independent Party, 1 libertarian, 4 say no party preference. You know what disappointed me, Arlen? Not one green. Not one green candidate. I would have thought somebody would run on the Green Party banner, but no one.
Yeah, you're right. That is rather surprising. Although I did have an opportunity to vote for a Green Party candidate for our congressman. I'm not a big fan of Panetta, but they had a Green Party candidate who I could vote for. I looked him up, and he had some, he had progressive views, so he's the one I voted for.
That's great. Who was it, if I can ask?
I don't remember his name. I don't think I've heard of him before. But
the reason it wasn't someone, because we used to have, remember I used to have a guy on every week with a Green Party segment. He looked like David Crosby, and now I can't remember his name. Super nice guy. I hope he's still Eric.
Eric Peterson, maybe? Or
maybe it was Eric Peterson, yeah. That's not who was on the ballot?
I don't know, but when I first came to Monterey, I had a gardener, and he gardened with me for about 10, 12 years, and it turns out he would run every 4 years for a representative as a Green Party candidate. So his name was Craig Coffin. I haven't seen his name lately, but it was kind of amusing.
Well, it makes sense that a gardener would be running as a Green. Presumably. He has a green trust at a minimum. A green thumb. What did I say? Trust. So there it is. Eric Peterson. Right. Let's show everyone Eric, because he's very distinctive looking and does indeed, I believe, look a little bit like David Crosby. In fact, he said to me before the first time we met, he said, "I'm the guy who looks like David Crosby." And I'm like, yeah, there it is. But unfortunately, let's see if I can get it. There we go. So it wasn't Eric. I would love it if he was running. He's a great guy. I love the Greens. Also, there are a few others. Mayor Delgado, I think, ran as a Green, the Marina mayor, and Jan Schreiner, also a Green, or maybe independent. So there are some, but in Monterey, anyway.
Yeah, but it is rather surprising there's no Green candidates at all on that long list of U.S. Senate candidates.
Right. That's what struck me, and it disappointed me as well. All right, anything? I think we're going to do that. This will do it, Arlen. Unless you've got any final something or others, maybe we'll say goodbye to Eric there as well. I'd rather be hiking. Yes, me too. That's a good thing to do.
The only thing I've noticed and what I really like is that I think Donald Trump is losing it more and more. There's more and more evidence that he doesn't know what he's talking about, says crazier and crazier things. He came up with that comment about, all the migrants, they have languages we've never even heard of. And, he just says stupid things all the time. And eventually I think it'll catch up with him. At least I hope it will.
Well, what's interesting, Arlen, is I really would have to say this, that the Democrats really caught a huge break that they're going up against Trump. Because I think given Biden's pretty obvious decline. And I'm not arguing with you that Trump has also got mental issues, right? Problems with maybe it's age, maybe it's dementia. I don't know. He's clearly got some issues. I think if the Republicans had managed to nominate Nikki Haley, and by the way, I'm really glad they didn't, not because I want Biden to win, but I'm glad they didn't nominate Haley because I think her policies are awful. I think they're worse than Trump's. So I'm glad they didn't nominate her. I think they're worse than Biden's. But I think she would have won. I think she would have had I think she might be the odds-on favorite to defeat Biden if she were the Republican nominee.
And it's still possible she could be. But it's an interesting dilemma because, I don't want to see Trump on the ballot, because that would leave a possibility that he could become president. But I think he'll be easier to beat. You're correct. Than almost anybody else, by the time November comes around.
I mean, people vote are so, just based on, impressions. And you see Nikki Haley, she's relatively young. She's vibrant. Yeah. She's a woman. I mean, a lot of people would say it's time for a woman president. I don't fully disagree. I don't disagree with that. As long as it's a progressive woman who's pro-peace and, pro-environment. Pro-economic justice, that's fine, but she's none of those things. So I wouldn't support her, but I think people would look at Nikki Haley and say, well, she looks like somebody we want to have as our president. And I think she would have a real good chance.
She's a different kind of Republican. She is a woman. She's got some ethnic background that, Republicans usually don't have. And but you're right. Her issues, she's terrible on the issues. And
her policies, she may look different than other Republicans, but her policies are identical to them. And Trump's actually aren't. Trump is to a degree a little bit of a wild card when it comes to policy. And I think that's the reason he's way ahead in the polls.
I think that's the problem for Nikki Haley is she doesn't fit the Republican mold for somebody they would like to nominate, just based on, gender and background and all that kind of thing. So, yeah,
I think it's because Trump has at least made semi-credible outreach to working people, and that Republicans have never done that before, at least not in my lifetime. Well, I guess Reagan did, but his policies were just so harmful, but not that Trump's have been good. All right, Arlen, if that's it, and let's call it a day because I gave you plenty of time to get your points in. Did you get any? You got everything you want to say out, right?
Probably not everything, but I'm happy with what I said.
All right, thebigpicturereport.com. Don't forget to go there, and I'll be back tomorrow. Arlen will be back next week. Thanks for joining us on Halitics.
Okay, thank you, Al.